There's a psychological truth that's about to completely change the way you see yourself. If you spend hours replaying conversations that already ended, if you analyze every decision you make until exhaustion, if your mind never stops simulating future scenarios, this video is going to reveal something that probably nobody has explained to you before. You're not broken, you're not weak. In fact, what's happening in your mind is much more complex and fascinating than you imagine. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you think this way, what hidden advantages your way of processing the world has, and most importantly, how to use this in your favor instead of allowing it to destroy you from within. Because the reality is this: overthinking doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous to yourself. Let me start by telling you something you probably already know but have never been able to express in words. If you're the type of person who relives conversations, decisions, and mistakes hours, days, even weeks after they happened, then you live more in your mind than in the present moment. Psychologists have a technical name for this: cognitive overprocessing. And although your entire life people have told you it's a defect, that you need to relax, that you should stop overthinking everything, the reality is much more uncomfortable and complex than they've led you to believe. You see, your brain isn't defective. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do. The problem is that nobody explained to you that this training, although it served you at some point, has now become an invisible prison. And I'm going to show you exactly how that prison works, brick by brick, thought by thought. Because once you understand the architecture of your own mind, you're going to be able to consciously decide when to use that power and when to let it go. Let's start with the first trait, one you probably recognize but never knew how to name: hyper-emotional awareness. People who overthink have an almost supernatural ability. They can read emotions even when nobody is openly expressing them. You notice things that others completely ignore. That uncomfortable silence that lasted 3 seconds too long. That almost imperceptible change in someone's tone of voice. That gaze that held for half a second longer. That smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. Your mind connects dots that don't even exist for others. And this isn't magic, it's not paranoia, it's pure neurology. Your brain is literally trained to anticipate emotional threats. At some point in your life, consciously or unconsciously, you learned that understanding the emotional environment around you kept you safe. Maybe you grew up in a home where you needed to read your parents' mood before speaking. Maybe you experienced social rejection and learned to detect signs of disapproval before they became explicit. Or maybe you were simply born with a more sensitive, nervous system than average. Whatever the reason, your brain developed this hypersensitive emotional radar. And here's the problem: that radar doesn't turn off. You detect emotions that aren't even your responsibility. You carry the emotional states of other people. You confuse intuition with obligation. You feel it's your job to fix the tension in a room even when nobody asked you to. You assume that if someone is upset, somehow it's because you did something wrong. And here comes the truly uncomfortable part, the one probably nobody has told you before. Your mind doesn't overthink to sabotage you. It doesn't do it because you're neurotic or insecure. It does it to protect you. The problem is that this protection, this mechanism that was once your salvation, has become a prison. And right now you're going to understand exactly how that prison is built, thought by thought. Let's move to the second trait, one that is absolutely fascinating from a neurological standpoint: deep, non-linear thinking. Listen to me carefully because this is crucial. People who overthink don't think more, they think deeper. There's a huge difference. Your mind doesn't follow straight lines. It doesn't go from A to B. It jumps between scenarios, future consequences, hidden possibilities, connections that other brains don't even consider. While most people simply think, "What do I do here?" You think in layers. Your mental process sounds something like this. What if I do this? How will this decision affect things 6 months from now? What does this choice say about who I really am? What could go wrong that I'm not seeing? What if the other person interprets it differently? What scenarios am I ignoring? This type of thinking is directly linked to high activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for complex analysis, long-term planning, and mental simulation of the future. Basically, your brain is running multiple simulations simultaneously, like a computer processing different scenarios at the same time. The advantage of this is obvious. You make more conscious decisions than most people. You see risks that are completely invisible to others. You anticipate consequences that others only discover when it's too late. But the cost is brutal. Paralysis by analysis, doubts even after you've made a decision. That constant feeling of, what if I had chosen differently, that haunts you weeks later. And here's what most self-help advice doesn't tell you. You can't just turn off this type of thinking. You can't force yourself to think more simply or linearly. Your brain is literally wired differently. But what you can do, and this is fundamental, is learn to direct that power instead of allowing it to drag you around. If all this is making you uncomfortable, if you're starting to feel that uncomfortable recognition of, damn, this is me, then good. It means you're paying attention. It means you're truly seeing yourself for the first time. Because we haven't even gotten to the most dangerous trait yet. But before we get there, I need you to do something. If this video is resonating with you, if it's putting words to experiences you never knew how to explain, hit the like button right now. And subscribe to Pulso Mental, because this channel exists specifically for people like you. People who think deeply, who feel intensely, who need to understand the why behind everything. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe to superficial content. I'm inviting you to a community of people who are doing the real work of understanding themselves. And if you have something to share, if there's something in your experience that resonates with what I'm saying, leave it in the comments. This is a conversation, not a monologue. Now, yes, let's go to the third trait, the one that's perhaps the most painful of all. Constant silent self-criticism. People who overthink don't need anyone else to judge them. They're already doing it themselves all the time without rest. You replay conversations that happened days ago. Mentally rewrite your responses, obsessively wonder if you said too much or too little, if you were too intense or too distant, if the other person noticed that awkward moment as much as you did. Psychological research shows something fascinating. People with high introspection, that is, people like you, tend to have a hyperactive inner critic. But here's the twist. It's not because they're fundamentally insecure. It's because their mind is naturally oriented toward improvement, correction, and optimization. Your brain is constantly looking for ways to do better next time. The problem, the truly devastating problem, is that you confuse growth with punishment. You never give yourself mental rest. You never allow yourself to simply be enough. You demand standards from yourself that you would never apply to another person. If a friend made the same mistake as you, you'd tell them it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not a big deal. But with yourself, there's no mercy. Only analysis, only demands, only you should have done better. And here comes the part that nobody really wants to admit, the uncomfortable truth you've probably been avoiding. This trait, without control, without conscious direction, is exactly what starts to wear you down from the inside. It's the voice that tells you you're not enough while simultaneously demanding you be perfect. It's the one that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning replaying a conversation from a week ago. It's the one that turns every small mistake into evidence that there's something fundamentally wrong with you. But stay with me, because this is about to connect in a way that will completely change your perspective. Let's move to the fourth trait. Hypersensitivity to consequences. While most people live in the moment, you live the consequences before they happen. Your mind is constantly projecting into the future. If I say this, how will the other person interpret it? If I do this, what will change in our relationship afterward? If this goes wrong, how will it affect me in a month, in a year? Your brain is trained to predict future scenarios as a control mechanism. It's a sophisticated survival strategy. It makes you responsible, cautious, aware of your actions and their long-term effects. But it also robs you of something fundamental. It robs you of spontaneity. It robs you of peace of mind. It robs you of the ability to enjoy a moment without simultaneously anticipating its loss. Have you ever been in a beautiful moment, a genuinely good moment, and instead of just enjoying it, your mind immediately jumps to "this is going to end," or "what if I ruin this," or "this is too good to last"? That's hypersensitivity to consequences. It's your brain trying to protect you from future pain by ruining your present pleasure. And here's the brutal truth you've probably been avoiding, the one that connects all these traits. You're not broken. You're not defective. You don't need to be fixed. You're mentally overstimulated. Your problem isn't that you think too much. Your problem is that you don't know when to stop. It's that you never learn to distinguish between productive thinking and destructive rumination, between useful analysis and mental torture. Now the fifth trait, the one very few people are willing to admit: high capacity for self-awareness. This is the trait that changes everything. People who overthink have a brutal, almost painful awareness of themselves. You know exactly when you're lying, even when the lie is small and socially acceptable. You know when you're betraying yourself, when you're saying yes but feeling no. You know when something doesn't feel right, even though it makes perfect logical sense. This level of self-awareness is extraordinarily rare. It's the foundation of deep psychological growth, of real and lasting change. But without direction, without a conscious purpose, it becomes existential anxiety. It becomes that feeling of constantly observing yourself from the outside, judging every action, every word, every thought. Imagine living with an internal observer that never sleeps, that's constantly taking notes on your performance in life. That's high self-awareness without integration. It's exhausting. It's like having a film critic sitting next to you throughout your entire life, commenting on every scene, pointing out every continuity error. But here's the twist, the part that transforms all of this from a curse into untapped potential. All these traits, the hyper-emotional awareness, the deep, non-linear thinking, the constant self-criticism, the hypersensitivity to consequences, the high self-awareness, aren't defects. They're incredibly powerful tools that nobody taught you how to use correctly. It's like you were given a Ferrari but only taught how to drive in first gear. Of course it's going to be frustrating. Of course it's going to feel wrong. But the problem isn't the Ferrari, it's that nobody taught you how to drive it. So how do you break this cycle? How do you transform this from a prison into a power? Not by trying to think less. You already lost that battle before you started. Your brain doesn't work that way. Instead, you need to learn to decide faster. You need to develop what I call conscious mental cutoffs. Here's a real psychological trick based on cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness practices. When your mind starts to spiral, when you feel you're entering that vortex of overanalysis, ask yourself just one question. Just one. Will thinking more about this change anything, or will it just wear me down? If the honest answer is that it will change something, if there's a decision to make, an action to take, a problem to solve, then go ahead. Think. Analyze. Use that powerful brain you have. But if the answer is that it will only wear you down, if you're just replaying something that already happened and can't be changed, then you stop. Not because you're weak, not because you're avoiding, but because you're aware. Because you're actively choosing where to put your mental energy. And here's the revolutionary part. Stopping doesn't mean suppressing. It doesn't mean forcing yourself not to think about something. That doesn't work. What works is recognizing the thought, validating it, and then consciously redirecting your attention. It's like telling your mind, I hear you, I see you want to analyze this again, and I'm choosing not to do it right now. Another powerful strategy: establish time windows for thinking. This sounds counterintuitive, but it works incredibly well. Instead of trying not to think about something all day, give yourself permission to think about it intensely for 15 minutes. Set a timer. During those 15 minutes, think about it all you want. Analyze, dissect, turn it over, but when the timer goes off, you're done. And if your mind returns to that topic later, you remind it, we already thought about this today, we'll revisit it tomorrow in our thinking window. You also need to learn to distinguish between 3 types of thinking. First, productive thinking. Analysis that leads to action or understanding. Second, processing thought, when you're genuinely processing an emotional experience, which is necessary and healthy. Third, rumination. Going over the same thing again and again without getting anywhere new. The first is useful, the second is necessary, the third is destructive. And the key is learning to identify which one you're in at any given moment. Now let's talk about something probably nobody else is going to tell you. Your capacity to think deeply, to feel intensely, to analyze complexly isn't just a neutral characteristic you need to manage. It's potentially your greatest strength. The people who change the world, who create meaningful art, who solve complex problems, who deeply understand other human beings, are frequently people who think exactly like you. The difference between someone who is destroyed by their own mind and someone who uses it to create something extraordinary isn't in the intensity of the thinking. It's in the direction, it's in having a purpose for that mental power. When you channel that deep thinking toward creativity, toward problem solving, toward genuine understanding of yourself and others, it transforms completely. It's no longer a curse, it's a superpower. Think about it this way. Your mind is like a river with an incredibly strong current. If it has no direction, it floods everything, causes destruction, drags you along. But if you build channels, if you give it direction, that same force can move mills, generate energy, give life. And here's what you need to understand at the deepest level. The goal isn't to become someone who thinks less. The goal is to become someone who thinks strategically, who uses their mind intentionally, who knows when to analyze and when to let go. Another crucial thing, you need to create what I call mental discharge rituals. Your brain processes much more information than average. It needs ways to discharge that information. It could be writing, it could be talking with someone you trust, it could be art, music, intense physical movement. Whatever allows you to externalize what's spinning around in your head. Because here's the truth. If you don't give your mind a productive way to process, it's going to keep ruminating. It's simple biology. Energy needs to go somewhere. Also, and this is vital, you need to learn to trust your decisions. I know this sounds impossible for someone who constantly doubts themselves. But here's the trick. You're not trying to make the perfect decision. You're trying to make a good enough decision and then commit to it. Paralysis comes from seeking absolute certainty in a world that doesn't offer absolute certainty. But you, with your capacity for deep analysis, have probably already considered 95% of the relevant variables. That additional 5% of analysis rarely changes the decision, but it always increases anxiety. Learn to recognize the point of diminishing returns in your analysis. That point where more thinking no longer adds real value, only adds noise. And finally, something you need to hear. It's okay not to optimize everything. It's okay to make decisions that are simply good enough. It's okay not to squeeze every situation to get the last drop of insight or lesson or meaning. Sometimes something just is. And that's enough. Your mind has been trained to find meaning, patterns, lessons in everything. And that's beautiful. But it's also exhausting if you don't know when to turn it off. You need to allow yourself moments of simply existing without analyzing your existence. Now let me tell you something probably nobody else has told you with this clarity. If you've made it this far, in this video, if all of this has resonated with you so deeply, then you already have the most important thing: awareness. You know how your mind works. You understand your patterns. And that understanding is the first step, the most crucial one toward real change. You're not going to wake up tomorrow thinking differently. You're not going to fix decades of mental patterns in a week. But every time you recognize when you're ruminating instead of productively analyzing, every time you consciously choose to redirect your attention, every time you give yourself permission to let go of a thought without completely resolving it, you're retraining your brain. Neuroplasticity is real. Your brain can change. But it needs repetition, it needs consistency, it needs you to be patient with yourself in the process. And this is fundamental. You need to develop compassion toward your own mind. That mind that has kept you safe, that has tried to protect you, that has worked tirelessly even when that work became counterproductive. It deserves gratitude, not judgment. It deserves direction, not condemnation. When you start relating to your mind as an ally that needs guidance instead of an enemy that needs to be defeated, everything changes. You stop being at war with yourself. And that inner peace, that cessation of internal hostilities, frees up an incredible amount of energy that you can use to create, to connect, to truly live. Look, the final truth is this. You're going to think deeply for the rest of your life. That's your nature. But you can choose whether that deep thinking serves you or enslaves you. You can choose whether you use that mental power to build or to destroy yourself. You can choose whether you become the victim of your own mind or the master of it. And that choice is made moment by moment, thought by thought, day after day. It's not a one-time decision. It's a constant commitment to yourself. If this video has given you clarity, if it's shown you something about yourself you couldn't see before, then my work here is done. But your work, your real work, is just beginning. So I'm going to ask you something. Don't just like this video. Don't just subscribe to Pulso Mental. Make a real commitment to yourself. Commit to applying at least one of these strategies this week. Just one. Choose the one that resonates most with you and practice it. And share this video with someone you think needs to hear this. Because there are millions of people out there who think exactly like you, who feel just as trapped in their own minds, who need to know they're not alone, that they're not broken, that there's a way to transform this. Subscribe to Pulso Mental because we're going to keep diving deeper into these topics. We're going to keep exploring the human mind with the honesty and depth it deserves. No superficial solutions. No empty motivational phrases, just real understanding and strategies that work. This isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a community of people who think deeply, who feel intensely, who are committed to truly understanding themselves. And we need more people like you in it. Remember, you're not broken. You're powerful. You just need to learn to direct that power, and now you know how to start. See you in the next video.